One of the things we like to do is we like to do a community workshop once a month, all types of different topics, wide ranges, but this month's is titled Top Pitfalls of a Runner, How to Avoid Setbacks. So my name is Ryland Austin. I'm a physical therapist here at Smart Body Physical Therapy. We primarily specialize in outpatient physical therapy, dealing from a wide variety of issues. So what I really tried to do with this PowerPoint is to focus in on three kind of categories, so basically three what we called pitfalls that either a beginner runner or even an advanced runner, somebody who's been running for a while, may fall into, to get them out of their productivity with running. So first things first, we really have to establish and understand, why are we running? What is it that is motivating us to think about putting ourselves through this stressful situation? And so, the most important reasons typically are health. Lose weight, try to stay healthy. Maybe you're in a sport, cross country, track, field, anything like that. A lot of people like to do it just to kind of get away from things. So, we know that when we exercise, we release a lot of endorphins and things like that. It makes us feel better. You get that little bit of a runner's high, so to speak. And the other thing is socialization. So doing it with friends, doing it with family, doing it in a group, kind of getting out there and mingling with a lot of different people who kind of have the same goal as you to be healthy. It's really hard to focus in on exercise and be healthy, do running, if you surround yourself with people who don't have those same goals, don't have those same ideals. You're gonna kind of follow the crowd, so to speak. So if you're with a crowd who likes to run, you're gonna run more. You're gonna get healthier. So what are some reasons why we eventually, or most people, I should say, end up, stopping what they're doing, stop running, stop exercising, don't reach their ultimate goals? The main reasons are usually either because it hurts when they do it, so they don't like it. They have an injury, so either they, broke something, tore something, pulled something, strained something, because they either weren't doing it right, did it too much, or they gave themselves unrealistic expectations. So they signed up for a marathon 2 months from now, but they've never ran before in their life, right? So they go out there and they start running 6-7 miles at a time. Sure, they do great for a week, but then they're done right after that. They got shin splints, plantar fasciitis. They never run again for the next 5 years, right? So it's kind of understanding, what your realistic expectations are. And the other thing is nothing holds you accountable. So that's another really important aspect of the keeping it social. People, if you run with people, that group of friends, that group of people will hold you accountable for, if we said we were going to run at 7 o'clock at the park and you didn't show up, you're going to catch crap for it, right? So, if nothing's holding you accountable, if you're just doing it on your own, typically you'll find an excuse and a reason not to do it. So what are 3 ways that we can, prevent this from happening and get into a good running program and get into good exercise? The first thing is avoiding the twos. So, too many miles, you're going too hard, too soon, too often. Basically not understanding either A, your body, or not understanding what your body can take. This is usually going to affect mostly beginners, people who haven't ran before, or haven't started, a serious exercise regimen before. This is what's going to affect them. They're going to believe that they can, more is better, no pain, no gain. And typically that's not the approach we want to take. Second thing is proper gear, proper apparel. Basically being prepared is this is more of a prepared category. Preparing yourself for it. You wouldn't expect to be able to go out and run 10 miles in that pair of running shoes that you've had for 5 years. That would be an unrealistic goal, an unrealistic expectation of yourself. The other thing is living in Florida, we have to deal a lot with the heat, the sun, things like that. So you got to prepare yourself so that way you put yourself in the best position to succeed. The third thing is just staying motivated. So we talked about that, holding yourself accountable being one of the ways, but setting yourself goals. Are you on the right program, the right regimen? Are you doing the right type of exercises and things that keep you excited to go do it? Obviously we're gonna have days where we don't want to go run, we don't want to go exercise, but overall, is it something that you're enjoying? That's going to be one of the ways to prevent yourself from having a setback. So we're going to start by talking about, proper gear and apparel, basically the preparedness. And by far and away, the most important piece of gear for a runner is your shoes. It all starts with the shoes. It all starts with the feet. It's the first part of your body that hits the ground when you're running. It's the first part of your body that absorbs all the shock, absorbs all that energy traveling up through your kinetic chain. If your shoes and if your feet are not in the right position, you're already off to a terrible start. There's no way that you're going to be able to fulfill all your goals of getting as far as you want to get, because now your body has been put at a biomechanically disadvantage. You've already put yourself from the first step you take at a disadvantage. The other thing is proper sweat absorption. So this is what allows our body to basically, maintain homeostasis, maintain our equilibrium as long as possible. When you run, you're going to build up a lot of lactic acid, you're going to build up a lot of carbon dioxide, you're going to need more oxygen, and we want to try to give our body a fighting chance. And so one of those ways is with sweat absorption. The other thing is decreasing environmental effects. So, especially being in Florida, like I talked about, the sun, heat, humidity, all those type of things. You want to try to decrease the effect that can have on you, even cold. We're not used to it getting very cold here. And so when it does get cold, we like to go run in it because it feels good. It feels good to go run in the cold here. But one thing is that, a lot of people don't understand is how to run in the cold. Do you run with the wind or against the wind first? Should you have on a lot of clothes and sweat a lot, or should you not have on a lot of clothes and maybe not sweat at all? So that's one of the things we'll kind of talk about a little bit. So first we'll talk about the sweat. So one basically item of clothing you want to avoid at all costs is cotton. All right, cotton absorbs moisture very well. And while that seems like a very good thing, we do want to absorb the moisture, absorb the sweat from our body. Cotton does not allow that sweat to evaporate as quickly. So basically just holds it, keeps it with you. If it was to stay on your skin, you'd be better off than wearing cotton, because that cotton is going to keep that sweat on you. It's going to keep it close to your body. Your body's going to get hotter, and you're not going to get that proper evaporation. So you want to wear items, like those Nike Dry Fits or microfiber type of clothing. They basically do what we call wicking. So that wicking is transporting the moisture off of our skin and allowing it to evaporate and get away from our body. So our body can produce more sweat. So it can try to maintain our homeostasis, maintain our equilibrium. Another good thing about it is it decreases, chafing, basically uncomfortable in those uncomfortable places. So either whether it's inner thighs or anything like that, if you're uncomfortable, developing blisters, things like that, this is what it's going to keep you from getting to those type of moments. So those pressure points and things like that. And having dry socks, so the blisters, like I just said, you want to try to always have a pair of dry socks. So, definitely, just because cotton socks are very squishy and cushiony and comfy, and you can wear them, they keep you warm when it's maybe cold outside, those would not be the socks that you would want to go run in, because those are going to develop the most blisters. You're going to have the most moisture stuck in your shoes. All right, so continuing on with the environmental factors. So in Florida, we talked about the heat. You need to drink plenty of fluids, plenty of water. That's kind of a given. Can't say it enough. So it's got to be put in there. It's a must. It's like rule number one. The other thing is, picking your time of day that you run. So obviously mornings and afternoons are going to be better when the sun is lower. You want to avoid those high peak noon hours. If for whatever reason you had to run at those hours, find a shady route, somewhere shady that you could go run, or a gym. If you're prescribed to a gym, then go run on the treadmill. If not, then try to find alternate ways. Run near bodies of water. So whether it's near the river, we're blessed here to be so close to the beach. Go run at the beach, get the breeze. Just because it's 100 degrees out there, that breeze will keep some of that heat off of you for the most part, and it actually helps your body wick the sweat away. So wearing loose-fitting clothes is going to help you feel the breeze and keep your body in a more equalized state. The other thing is wearing a hat, so head protection. Our head, it gets very hot. It's one of the areas of our body that, releases the most heat when we are exercising and are being very active. And this is an area there where, the sun obviously is beating down on us. So a lot of us, we wear hats. But just like your feet, you want to wear a hat that absorbs the moisture but doesn't hold the moisture. So either a mesh hat or those dry fit hats, things like that. You want to wear a hat that's going to allow you to pull the sweat off of you but allow the sweat to evaporate at the same time. The other thing we talked about is with the cold is you want to run against the wind first, because if you were to run with the wind first, you're going to run them much further and feel much better, and then now you have to turn around and run against the wind. So it's kind of like, paddling with the current and then having to paddle back against it. It's when you're most tired. That's rule number one. But the second thing is with sweating. Okay, so if you run with the wind first, you're going to sweat a lot because you're not getting that wind up against your face, that wind up against your body. So you're going to be sweating a ton. Then when you turn around to come run back, now you're running against the wind, you're going to evaporate all that sweat, and your body's going to go through a drastic change in body temperature. Typically, you're not going to do, you're going to have to stop at that point pretty much. You're going to start to cramp, you're going to start to get all kinds of problems with that. So running against the wind first, you're probably going to build up a little bit of sweat, but then when you turn around to come back home, now your body's going to sweat, you're going to do good, but by the time you're done, you're home, or you're done running, you're done exercising. So always run against the wind first for those two very important reasons. All right, so back to the shoes though. Why are shoes so important? So here's some of the science. Everybody likes science. So our feet will strike the ground about 1,700 times per mile. If you were to run a marathon, so this is using marathon numbers. If you were to run a marathon, that'd be about 44,000 foot strikes. So then if you look at the ground reaction forces, which is basically just the forces every time your foot hits the ground that travel up through your body, how well does your body absorb those forces? So if you weighed, let's say 150 pounds, that'd be about 450 pounds per foot strike. So you're looking at close to 20 million pounds of pressure that have been put through your body by the end of that marathon. What's the first thing that protects you from that is your shoes, right? So if you had a bad pair of shoes that didn't help absorb the forces, or didn't put your body in the right position to absorb those forces, now you're going to end up with shin splints, or you're going to even possibly fracture a bone in your foot or a bone in your ankle. And you're definitely going to be out of the race and out of the running at that point. But even just with running in general, you take away a marathon, just look at that number. So every foot strike, you're putting 450 pounds, through your foot. It's very similar to, we talk about back pain, with people picking things up. We don't realize, but like even just picking up, a shoe or picking up your cell phone off the table, you're putting 100 pounds of pressure in your back just picking up your cell phone. Something so simple that we don't think about on a day-to-day basis. But you figure every step you're taking throughout your day, it takes a toll on your body. And so this is one reason why shoes are so important. The other reason why is just your foot structure. So there are 26 bones in each foot, and you have 104 ligaments and tendons. Altogether, about 25% of your bones are going to be located in your feet alone. So that's a lot of hard, bony structures that don't have the soft, cushiony aspect of muscles and things like, and soft tissue like fat and things like that. That is straight bone. So that bone is absorbing all of the impact. So that's another reason why shoes are so important. So understanding your running shoe. So shoe selection is basically based on three things, but really one most important thing, and that's going to be your foot type. So whether you are a high arch, low arch, normal arch, or what we call, a flat foot, things like that, that is probably going to be your most important key ingredient to figuring out what type of shoe you need to wear. The other thing is just your running surface. Are you going to be running on somewhere that's soft, or are you running somewhere that's hard? If you're running somewhere hard like a road all the time, then you're going to need something with a lot more cushion in it, because we just showed you the forces. So you're going to need something that's going to be able to take those forces a lot better. If you're running somewhere soft like grass or the beach or anything like that, you probably don't need something as cushiony. You could go a little bit more of the minimalistic route, with the less cushion and the less support, and go for more comfort and speed and quickness and things like that. Or possibly your injuries. So, are you currently fighting knee pain, hip pain, back pain? Do you need to wear an orthotic? Things like that. Do you have to put inserts in your shoes? All those things are going to affect the type of shoes that you need to select. And here in Jacksonville, we have at least two great places to go get shoes. The New Balance store is a great place, and also Jack's running company, First Place Sports. Those are three actually, really good places to go to get shoes. When you go to get a shoe, they should, you should be able to relay to them the importance as far as what are you getting the shoe for. They should ask you what type of foot you have. What is it that you have pain with when you run? Do you run? Have you started running? All these things. They should ask you a handful of questions. It shouldn't just be, I like black ones. I like the ones that reflect in the dark. Things like that. style and color shouldn't matter at all. And typically, you're not going to get a style or color that you want when you're getting a running shoe. It's going to be the rainbow colored one that you prayed they weren't going to bring over to you. That's going to be the one that's going to probably fit you the best. And that's the one you have to go with. Running shoes typically are designed to be bright so that way people see you, but the color and the style is not ever a reason to buy a running shoe unless you're just trying to match it with a nice outfit, which I am guilty of many times. So the other thing is, your replacing of your shoes. So how often should you change out your shoes? This depends on obviously how often you run, how much you're running, how far you're running. But basically a rule of thumb is that around 600 to 800 miles, you're pretty much going to lose 70% of the shock absorption in your shoe. So typically that takes about 5 to 6 months based on the fact that if you ran around 25 miles per week. So if you're running, close to 25 miles per week, you're going to end up needing a new pair of shoes about every 5 to 6 months. And it's not a bad idea to even get new shoes sooner than that. And have a pair of shoes maybe that you can go run in when you're going to go do maybe like a mud run, or go do a run on the beach, or go do a run through the woods or anything like that. So that way you have a pair that can get kind of beat up and you're not as worried about it. So how do we figure out a foot type? They have these really great things at Walmart, the Dr. Scholl's things that you can go stand on. Those work good, but an even cheaper and easier way to do it is called the wet test. So basically with the wet test, all you're doing is you're taking a pan, like a baking sheet, filling it up with some water. You take your foot, you step in the water, just get it kind of wet. You don't have to soak it or anything like that. Put out a piece of paper, preferably a dark piece of paper, so like a brown grocery bag would be perfect. And then you just gently place your foot down on it. Don't roll your foot on it, just foot straight down, make flat contact on there, and then pick your foot back up. Based on the imprint that your foot makes, this is essentially the type of arch that you're dealing with. So there's a little chart right here, the wet test. You have normal, flat, and high. We're going to go into that right after this, where I'm going to talk to you first about the proper gait pattern. So when we run, we basically go through, 3 phases. So you have your initial heel strike phase. So that's going to be when the heel hits the ground. This is very typical for most people. Even whether you're flat-footed, high-arched, anything, your heel typically is going to hit the ground first. As that heel hits on the outside part, we naturally go through what we call pronation, which is basically just a rolling of the foot in. So your foot naturally rolls. As it rolls, it becomes more rigid. So by the time we get flat on the ground, all the force, our leg basically, so if you imagine me with the shoe on, should be going straight down into the shoe. Then at that point, the foot is actually going to come out of that pronation and go into the supination, or back into that rolled position. It becomes very rigid, and then we push off. So it basically becomes like a platform for our body to push off and go from. So that would be a proper, typical normal gait pattern. Heel, flat, toe off. So kind of starting on the outside, rolling onto the inside, and then pushing off the front. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to go over the 3 different arch types now. So the most common, normal arch, right? So you're going to have that typical running style, like I just told you guys about, that pronation running style. You can pretty much wear just about any type of shoe with this. You're not going to have as many needs as, say, a high arch or a low arch is going to have. You're going to be able to have stability, cushion, whatever it is that you really want. These are the people who may get to pick the shoe that they think looks coolest, because that no longer becomes a factor. So they're not having to deal with that as much. When you look at a person with a normal arch shoe, when you're looking at the bottom of the shoe, which is one of the ways that we tell, have we worn it out a lot, is, a normal arch is going to have most of their wear somewhere around here. So the bottom outside part of the shoe, so they're really making that heel strike. They're really putting a lot of their force through that spot first. And that's really where a lot of the force is kind of staying. They're getting a good disbursement of forces as they go into that foot flat, and then they're toeing off. So even in the front, you might have a little bit of wear there as well. Those are going to kind of be the typical wear patterns on a normal shoe. Whereas a low arch or flat foot, so this is what we call the overpronator. So this would be me. I'm an overpronator. This is where that pronation I talked about, so the foot kind of rolling on the inside and going out, these people do way too much of that. So basically their foot collapses. You've heard that, arch collapse, things like that. The foot no longer stays rigid at the moment that they need it to be rigid. So for this type of runner or this type of person who wants to start walking, you know, it's going to be very important to get a motion control shoe. So you're going to want something that's not going to allow that foot to roll in, okay? You're going to want a shoe that's going to try to keep that. Now in severe cases, they have shoes that have roll bars in them and things like that, that actually physically put a limitation on the foot's ability to roll to the inside. One of the problems with the flat foot is that you don't get as good of shock absorption. That arch is where a lot of the forces are being dispersed through. And so if that arch collapses, you know, all that shock is basically not getting to leave that area. It gets stuck in that area. When it gets stuck in that area, you develop a lot of things, a lot of pain. These people typically are going to get fractures in their foot, in their low foot, and things like that. On the wet test, this foot is going to be the biggest. You're going to see the most part of your foot. You may even see your whole foot when you do the wet test. On the normal arch, you're going to see about half the foot. So if you go about halfway up from the heel to the toes, you're going to see about half the foot on a normal arch. On this one, you're going to see most of the foot. And then on the high arch, the supinator, so basically the opposite of pronation, you're going to not see very much foot. The foot may not even connect on the wet test. So these people are people who are going to have increase in shock up through the body, up through the kinetic chain. You know, their arch is not going to absorb very much shock at all. So these are the type of people that need a lot of cushion, because they're going to need help with absorbing the shock. They're going to need help in preventing knee pain and hip pain and back pain and things like that. So you're going to want to avoid any shoes that control motion, right? Because if you are running and we're trying to control the motion for somebody who has a flat foot because we don't want it to roll, but a supinator or a high arch person, they